Welcome to POWTS Chat. Again, second Tuesday of the month, 9 a.m. here. We're going to go through a few things that have sort of the usual, a few topics that we have that are important to share with you, questions that we've had over the past, just different things that just trying to get information from our program out to you folks. Again, if there's something that you would like to hear, that you have not heard, we're always open for ideas, special topics or things like that. We're going to try to have a little bit more of a listing of what's going to be coming up, sort of a future attractions, so to speak, for plot out some things ahead of time if we have special guests or special speakers, or if there's something that you'd like to hear more about, we can maybe devote part of POWTS Chat into delving a little bit deeper into a different topic or something like that. So if you have suggestions, let us know individually, or you can put it into the chat here. We'll see what we can do. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is, we did have some POWTS vacancies. Those of you who are mostly aware that, CC was with us and she was in District 1. She had retired and, retired from state service. She's now in private practice. So we did have a job vacancy in District 1 that we needed to fill. But in addition to that, we also had two plan reviewer positions that were allotted in the state budget, and that was, the budget year ends June 30th, starts July 1st. Had a little bit of an issue there, the legislature and the governor, they have to work things out. And then how that, comes to be is that there were two plan review positions in the budget. So as part of that, we did have, we did have a District 1 field position filled November 6th, and then we have two plan reviewer positions in November 6th and January 18th. We can't announce how the people are until they've arrived, but as you notice, November 6th has already passed. So we have two new people, and they were on with us here. As we have Jeff Brubaker, who's a District 1 field person, and if you notice that our district maps have changed a little bit with CC's exit, trying to fit in, Jeff is out of the Wood County area, Wisconsin Rapids, so we had to adjust districts a little bit to encompass his home territory and make sure that he's in a district. And then we also have Heidi Eide, who is a plan reviewer with us at out of a home location. So I know they're both on here, so I'm going to give a minute. Jeff, if you'd like to pop in and just say hi a little bit.
Okay, I can do that. Yep, that's me, Jeff Brubaker, if you haven't met me before. Really glad to be here, learning new things, and like to expand my knowledge of the state of Wisconsin to a bigger area. So I've always really been into, even as a kid, soils and geology, and my whole career has been, whole 30 or so plus years has been with POWTS. So I've done a variety of things, and people, you want to reach out to me or meet with me or talk to me anytime, that'd be fine. So yeah, I'm just happy to get started here and
All right.
start a new portion of my career.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And I'll have the contact information coming up on the next slide, so we'll jump to that in a minute. And Heidi, would you like to say a couple words about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Heidi Eide. I originally was with the county for a couple of years. Before that, I was a wetland delineator, so definitely looking at a lot of plans and soils and things like that. But super excited to be here, and feel free to reach out with questions. Give me a shout, give me an email. I definitely will enjoy meeting everyone and getting to know everything, and I'll slowly get comfortable and learn more as I go. So.
All right, thank you much. And if, like I said, if you notice on the screen, we also have another plan reviewer position that will be joining us January 16th, and we'll announce that person once they're fully onboarded. We just don't want to make an announcement, if something happens and it falls through, but we do have an accepted offer that they will be joining us. Anticipated hire date is January 16th. So when that rolls around in a couple months, we'll announce that person and their position, but that will be another plan reviewer. So this is sort of what our map looks like now. So be aware, I have had some calls here recently. This is updated on our website, but it's going to take time for people to to realize that and become aware of it. I had a call yesterday. I had a soil tester says, "Hey, I need your input on a county," and respectfully, I told him, I said, "Well, that's not my county anymore, so I'll have to pass you off to somebody else, and they'll be doing the on-site." So just be aware, the district maps have changed a little bit. There's a few counties that are affected. Some others, the districts have not changed, but there are some that have changed. So just be aware. Take a look at that if you are seeking some input from a field person. There's different areas, different contacts. So Jeff's right there. His email, his phone number. Again, this is on our website, so if you don't copy it down now, you can go to DSPS, the POWTS page, and you can access it all there. But so anyway, Jeff's contact information is there. The other 4 districts, again, same contacts. We just traded a little bit of territory. And then Josh is still our plan reviewer, Josh Rowley. And then Heidi is now up there as a second plan reviewer. And remember, January 16th, we will be adding a third plan reviewer. So for those of you that, I'll talk about that in a minute here. We talked about plan review. We're going to have 3 full-time plan reviewers plus the field staff being able to process plans. And then April, you've met, I think, in the previous POWTS chats, is our section chief, and she's new since July. So anyway, that's sort of an update on what's going on with the POWTS staff. So as I mentioned, plan reviews, we did have a little bit of a backlog with our project positions ending, Jerry's retirement, vacations and other stuff that's going on that happens in the summer. Plus, we're obviously busy in the summertime for POWTS. And we got a little behind. So and on October 19th, we were at 197 plans we had in the queue. Those were plans that were submitted and waiting to be approved, and we were at 17 days out. We're supposed to maintain a 15-day, no more than 15 days out, and those are business days. And so we were behind. So we were instructed not to do any field work, and we had sort of been doing that, just essential field work, but not doing much through a lot of the summer anyway. But we were granted overtime, and so the POWTS program, everybody pitched in, and we knocked some plans out. And it actually didn't take us long. It took us, I think, about 2 weeks. We knocked out a lot of plans, mostly over one weekend, but 2 weeks. And then, so we reduced quite a few of our backlog of plans. And where we're sitting at now, this was yesterday, late in the day, November 13th, we were at 63 plans in the queue, and we were only 11 days out. So we didn't reduce that many days, but reduced a lot of plans. But even though we're still several days out, there's some gaps in there where some days, weekend, there's just very few plans coming in. So we might do 10 plans, and you might gain a couple days, depending on sort of when the plans came in, how many per each day. Those can bump around quite a bit. I think for a while there were only 8 days out because depending on when weekends fall or things like that. So anyway, we've reduced the number of plans quite a bit. We're moving along with the new folks that just started a week ago, Monday, November 6th. We're still in training with them, so they're not up to full speed, and we're not moving quite as fast as we were because we're helping do training for them. But again, there's only 63 plans in the queue. We've really knocked that down. So just want to point that out. The other thing that's sort of interesting is as of yesterday, we did 3,113 plans, and I put as many as all of 2022, but technically 2022 we did 3,114, so we're one plan short. But basically, we've done as many plans so far this year as we had done all of last year, and so we still have November and December to go yet. Not that there's a lot of plans coming in this year, but we'll probably come in 150 or so plans ahead of what we did last year. So it's been busy. Granted, we were a little bit behind there, starting in August through September and into October, we kept getting a little bit farther behind. But with 3 plan reviewers now, or going to be 3 plan reviewers on staff after January, and then the 5 field people, we should be really poised to handle everything well next year. And again, those plan reviewer positions were part of a budget process, and really pushed for by some outside groups such as the county code administrators and WARA and the public. So we're happy to have everybody on board and should be, like I said, really poised next year to do a much better job. Wanted to point out sort of an homage back to Jerry, who retired this last year with us. His one of his favorite things to talk about was plan review issues. So I'm gonna keep Jerry in our minds and have him up there. His favorite saying was "Come on, man!" And so we did have a lot of plan review issues also. I know when I was doing we had some of that overtime there. I think I approved 34 plans, but I had, I think, over a dozen or 15 of them on hold. So out of the plans that I pulled, I had probably about a 2/3 pass rate and about 1/3 was being placed on hold. Unfortunately, a lot of them weren't for major issues. They were for, well, what I would call minor things, but minor things that did not allow me to process the plan. So the other bad part is if we have lots of plan submittals, we also have lots of errors, and we know everybody gets busy, and it's really hard to stay on top of things and have a good submittal when you're not busy and it's January. You have a lot of time to devote to preparing your plan and sending it in. When times are busy and customers are yelling that they wanted it done last week, you're just trying to get the paperwork out the door, but then there's lots of errors attached with that. So there's a lot of things we were seeing. Again, it's quieted down now some that everybody has more time to devote to making sure it's a good plan, but simple things such as missing attachments. We were just seeing plans that come in and there's just nothing. There was no plan even attached to it. So you sent everything in, but the plan itself. And so we have to wait and get that information. We also had incomplete attachments where we would have like a PDF of the plan, but there would be no soils, or there would be an interpretive required and no reference to the interpretive, where it is, what it is, no copy of that. So we would have things that were just incomplete or missing parts out of a plan. Simple things like just not having it signed, no signature on there. We had a lot of copying issues where you might copy a plan from, it's a 6x75 mount. I've done a lot of them, but the information is incorrect because, different site characteristics, or you copy the plot plan from the wrong site, things like that. Incorrect data entry, these are mostly with the crew files, is I had one plan that it had the wrong information entered, and then the crew file itself even flagged it. There was boxes that appeared that said, the flow is too low. It's below 2 feet per second, and the error box showed. Had another one that showed that this size pipe doesn't work. Another one showed something else. The dose is off, and so there were even errors on the crew file. So not only was the information entered incorrectly, but the errors were on the crew file, and the submitter didn't even see that there were errors that were popping up. So make sure, again, when you're going through, take your time, even when it's busy, make sure the right information get to us. Just illegible stuff. We've had some that have come through that have been photocopied so many times we can't see things, or photocopies of air photos or things off of county maps. We just can't read it. Trying to put a plot plan on top of air photos, it's too dark. We can't see. And then format issues. We've had some issues that take us, a little bit of time on your end can save us a lot of time on our review end. I've seen some that have come in instead of in PDF files, they come in as individual JPEGs or individual pictures. So they've been individuals and also individual PDFs. And so you may have a 20-page plan, but it's 20 individual pages. And then we have to take time to stitch that together, sort it out. Sometimes things are scanned in upside down or sideways, and it takes us a lot of time to collate those things, straighten them out, get them readable, put them back in one document before we can even start doing any kind of plan review. And that slows us down. So just be aware, different errors, issues out there. Make sure that your plans are correct before you send them in. I wanted to mention, we had some questions about mound setbacks. This crops up every so often. Where do you measure setbacks from a mound? Because the DNR specifically mentions mounds in their NR 811 code that it is from the perimeter. So all the other systems are measured from the cell, but to a well, you measure from the perimeter. So just want to point that out. You can see all the other setbacks from buildings. We will measure from the cell. Can't have the slopes go over a property line. They can be up to it. We call it 0+ feet. They can be right up to it, but not on it. But the cell itself would have the setback of 5 feet to a property line, 10 feet from a building, etc. But wells are measured a little bit different. So just be aware of that. Wanted to mention variances. Besides the plans that come in, we also have variance forms that we process. And one of the important things with the variance is that, the form must be complete. So we miss various things, and I just called out a couple on here, but the biggest ones that we seem to miss are the county position statement. We're not getting the input from the county on what they think of the variance. Do they agree with it, or do they say, no, I don't agree with that variance, or these are the reasons why? So we should have a county position, either yes, no, or indifference. We just don't care. It's up to the state to decide. Again, it's just a position statement. Even if the county says no, we may grant the variance anyway, but we still want input from the county. We want them to, they've probably been there, they've seen it. We would like to know what their input is on it. We also need to have the code section petition. Each section is a separate variance. So if you have more than one setback, you can petition, the table in 383 and just say I'm petitioning setbacks and that, but each code section is separate one. So if you need a setback from, whatever, you need a setback petition, but then I also need a variance for some other kind of condition or whatever. Each code section is a separate variance, and so a separate petition. And then the most important thing that seems to be forgotten is that petitions for us work on equivalency to the code. So you must state an equivalency. Just because I can't meet a setback doesn't mean we can grant it. Unlike some zoning setbacks or something, you can create a hardship. If you've got a lot and you want to use it all to build a big house and you need setback variances because you're going to, encroach upon a septic system or something like that with a building or a garage, you can do that, but it's all based on equivalency. So you have to state how you're going to meet equivalency of the code. So for instance, the most common one we see is a setback to a building. And how would you meet the equivalency? Well, the setback is there to protect not only, let's say the tank or the system, but also protect the building. So you'd have to state some kind of equivalence that, how am I going to protect the tank or how am I going to protect the building? For instance, it's a drain field that's too close, but, it's a garage on a slab. I don't have a footing or a foundation, or I'm not going to be excavating near the tank because it's just a slab. Those would be some equivalencies that we would look at. But it's important to establish an equivalency to the code, not just I can't meet it and just give me a variance.
Matt, before we move on to the next topic,
Yeah.
could you return to that slide about mound setbacks and then talk about the setback? So you had mentioned to the cell, but regarding the basal area, I know this was specifically about well setbacks, but
yeah,
for
the
SPS
setback
regarding the basal area.
Yeah, the setback, typically we have is to the basal area, so that would be the cell and the downslope toe here. So like this, the setbacks for like a building or something like that, we measure to basically that edge, which would be the cell and the basal area.
Thank you, Matt.
So the next section I want to talk about here is I have several slides on a general plumbing update. So you may be asking, well, we're in POWTS, why do we care about general plumbing? Well, we do reference, 381 through the whole suite of the plumbing code. So 381, 382, 384 are the bulk of the plumbing. And if there's any changes in there, they may affect us in the POWTS program. So it's important for us to understand and know what's going on in general plumbing. So you don't have to go through and delve through all the plumbing changes to see what affects POWTS, as I've gone through and found those ones that are most likely to affect us. So I think I got them all. So maybe there's something out there I'm not aware of. But so a few of the things I want to point out is restricted service licenses, the old. So this is what the old code used to say. As the previous allowed, those was restricted service, master plumbers and journeymans. They could do, POWTS systems. Building sewers and private interceptor mains. So we know we could do the building sewer from the building out to the septic system. Typically, general plumbing is everything up to the septic tank, but it allows us to do that, or allows restricted service people to do that. Water services, private water mains under 381. And a portion of the drain or water supply that connects building sewer to the connection provided mobile home, manufactured home. So that's what it previously allowed to do. There's been some expansion of that. We still have some of the same, privately owned wastewater treatment systems components, so POWTS, building sewers, sanitary building sewers, and storm building sewers. So now it adds that. And you can do it from the street main to immediate inside proposed foundation or wall of the building. So it doesn't have to be a building sewer connected to a POWTS. You could also do any building sewer and building sewers for storm. Also water services, private water mains, manufactured home community water supply systems, and campground or recreational park water supply systems. So it's expanded that a little bit. The same as before, you can do the portion of drain or water supply systems through mobile home. That is the same. But you can also do manufactured home or mobile home community drain systems, sanitary drain systems, and storm systems, campground and recreational park systems, drain systems, or storm systems. So it added the storm in a lot of that. It also allows those restricted licenses to do wastewater treatment devices. So those are not located within a building's foundation perimeter. So you might have a wastewater treatment device and then it goes back into the building. So you could be able to do those. Also stormwater use systems and reclaimed water systems. So if you're doing some kind of reclamation, something outside a building perimeter. So you wouldn't be able to do an inside one, but if they pipe it outside, goes through some kind of a reuse or reclaiming or treatment, and then it goes back into the building as a restricted, you would be able to do that kind of work. So just a little bit of a difference there on what the licensing updates or what allows you to do. Some of the other plumbing code changes, SPS 382.21 parent 1, testing of plumbing systems. Except as provided, it says all new plumbing and all parts of existing systems that have been altered, extended, or repaired shall be tested and inspected as specified. So this adds language that it has to be inspected. Previously, you could just test it as a plumber and just say it's good to go and move on. Now it says it has to be inspected. So be aware that if you are doing some of these other things out there, it does require an inspection. The other thing that I've also extended to the counties is that now with building sewers, it requires them to be inspected. So we should be noting that if you're looking at that stuff, that you note that you inspected it, or if you did not, note that you did not inspect these things, because where general plumbing and POWTS take over, we just want to make sure that if you are inspecting it, you note it, and if you're not, note that you did not, because we don't want somebody coming by saying, well, the county was out there, they looked at that, and you say, no, that was a stormwater or whatever water reuse system, and that's not my purview. I don't look at that. I did not inspect that part of it. So just make sure from the county's end or as the inspector end that you're noting what you inspected, what you did not, and then from the plumber's end, if the county's not looking at it, that you make sure you contact UDC or the general plumbing folks and you get something inspected, because it's required to be inspected.
Matt, maybe this would warrant an
Yeah.
update to the state's inspection form. I know it's not compulsory to use those inspection forms, but a lot of counties do. I think most counties do. So maybe it would be a good thing to update those and include language or
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. This plumbing code just came out in October. We're still working through it with general plumbing on how some of these things are going to be, worked out. But yeah, we will look at, we'll look at doing some updates and some changes to the forms, possibly this winter. Once we're done doing plan review, we've got a lot of other winter projects, but this is mostly just to let everybody know these are some things out there that have been changed. But yep, we'll take that under consideration. So the next section here, SPS 382.34, parent 5, parent B 2, private on-site wastewater systems. It says all new altered remodeled plumbing systems that discharge to a private on-site wastewater treatment systems shall be provided with grease interceptors of sufficient capacity to ensure compliance with 383.44 parent 2. So what this does is that the language change is it removes the requirement to have an exterior grease interceptor. So you can now use an interior grease interceptor. But the catch is that the way the language is worded is it says if you have a grease interceptor, it must meet the requirements of SPS 38344 parent 2, which is, and I don't have the whole thing here, but it's basically we have to meet the domestic wastewater strength. So the way that's been interpreted is that they had all the parameters in there. General Plumbing is interpreting that only to mean that it has to meet the grease, the FOG standard. So the way it's worded and the way it states now is that, and we're still working this out with General Plumbing, and General Plumbing's coming up with guidelines on it, but it appears that if you have a grease interceptor connected to a POWTS, the waste coming out of that grease interceptor must meet the standard of 30 FOG coming out of that grease interceptor. So we're still working with General Plumbing on if they're going to require testing requirements for that. That's what it appears, is that they're going to require testing to see that it meets that. If it is going to a POWTS, that they meet the 30 FOG. So just want you to be aware of that there is a change there. They can't have an interior instead of exterior, and that there is a requirement that it meets the 383.44 parent 2 parameters for wastewater. Also, with grease traps or grease interceptors, 383 or 382.345C1G says any new or replacement exterior grease interceptor shall have at least 2 compartments. So now grease traps or grease interceptors can't just be a single tank; they have to have at least 2 compartments. There are also some requirements in there under that section that add specific tank specifications. So, where manholes have to be, how close to the inlet, outlet, sizing, and location of different parts of that tank. So just be aware if you are adding one in, there's a little bit of change to that. The manufacturer should be up on what those changes are, but just be aware that there are some changes to the sort of the geometry of what the tanks look like besides having a 2-compartment tank for a grease interceptor. 383.71 Department Procedures. There was some people had some questions that why was this removed? And this is the previous paragraph. The department shall support performance monitoring program from Wisconsin fund allocations and program revenue funds generated from POWTS plan review and sanitary permits. So that was removed out of the code. And some people are concerned about, well, no, you're not going to do any performance monitoring and it's gone. Well, it doesn't remove the rest of the section. It just removes where the funding comes from. So by removing this section, it allows the funding to come from any place. So hopefully, we did try in this past budget, there wasn't money allocated, but we tried to get a line item in the budget to say we want a special allotment for the performance monitoring that's not tied to Wisconsin fund or program revenue. We want a separate line item. So this gives us the flexibility to do that, as to if we can get funding from any source to use it. It doesn't specifically have to come out of Wisconsin fund or out of the plan review or sanitary permits. So that's why it was removed. It doesn't remove the whole performance monitoring section out of the code, just removes where the funding has to come from. So it gives us more flexibility, not less. Wanted to mention complaints. This summer, we've dealt with some issues on complaints. It's not just a licensing issue. That a plumber or a soil tester did something wrong or incorrect. Obviously complaints do that. Counties can turn it in. A competitor. If you know that you've got a guy out there and he's doesn't have a license or is putting things in without, and it's not just licensing issues, it's not having a license is a license issue. Putting systems in without permits or without a license, or hiring unlicensed people or contracting with them. For us to investigate a complaint is we have to have a complaint to start with. We all hear, well, we all sort of know this guy doesn't do stuff right, or this product doesn't work. Well, until we get complaints, we don't know that for sure, and there's nothing we can investigate. It's also important to develop a track record. We've had some cases where, we had enough, we finally turned in a complaint, or a county or a private individual turns in a complaint, and for us, that's the first time we've heard about it. You may have dealt with it individually, multiple times, but to us, it's just the first case. So it's important to develop a track record. Turn the complaints in. We can build a case of somebody abusing their license, or unlicensed people, or further down here, product issues. It's just as important to track bad products. If we know that we have, hey, I keep ordering whatever product from this company, and I'm getting product failures, or they're falling apart, or they're not living up to the way that they is. You can turn a complaint in, and we can track that, and then we can investigate those product issues, or a license issue. So again, without the complaints coming in, one, we don't develop a track record, and two, we never are able to initiate an investigation into it. So help us, do our job. And I know it seems like, any kind of enforcement or resolution is a million miles away, but the first step, we got to take the first step in order to get to the end of our travels here, or to get to the enforcement of something. So we got to have that initial step of a complaint that comes in. So help us out. You can get to that on our website, the DSPS website. Type in DSPS complaints. It'll take you right to the page, and you can fill out an online complaint. It's pretty easy to do. Next thing I wanted to mention was GeoMat in-ground component manuals. We had a new manual November 6th of 2023. So the GeoMatrix is an approved product, but they came out with a new manual with some minor changes for the in-ground component manual. So I think Katie's going to pop in here and say a few words.
Yeah, so I'm going to take over for a little bit here. And there was a question that popped up in the chat regarding the Wisconsin Fund. And I don't know if you're planning on talking about that more later, Matt.
No, I did not have Wisconsin Fund as a slide in here.
Okay. So the question was if the income limit is the same, and yes, there's been no change to the income limit regarding the Wisconsin Fund. The brochure and all of the documents are on the DSPS website, and I'll include a link to that in my follow-up email.
Yeah.
So all that information.
Yeah, the only thing that changed for Wisconsin Fund is that it was set to terminate at a certain date, and now that date has been extended. But the income requirements, everything in Wisconsin Fund is the same as it's always been. It's just that now it's been extended a couple more years before the deadline date. So other than that, Wisconsin Fund rolls on.
Okay, so regarding the GeoMat in-ground component manual, as Matt said, it's been revised and updated as of November 6th. And there are a few little changes that I'd like to go through here, and a few reminders. So as a reminder, to find the component manuals, you need to go to ESLA Public Lookup. And the best way to find something in Public Lookup is to use as few search terms as possible. So to get all of the component manuals, you'd search in the products, plumbing products, voluntary POWTS component review. And I have that there blown up so that people can actually see it. My eyes are not very good. Your eyes probably aren't either. So that's the search terms that you would want to use there. Next slide, Matt. So when that is done, there'll be 15 entries that pop up. The one for the GeoMat in-ground manual, the manufacturer is GeoMatrix, and the model number for that is the GeoMat in-ground septic manual. By clicking yes on the document available, it'll open the PDF, which you can download, and that is the freshest, newest version of that component manual. That'll be on the second page for the search terms. Next slide. So just as a reminder, there are some things that have changed in the GeoMat component manual and some things that have not. But these are some of the things that we see as being overlooked sometimes in the GeoMat in-ground component manual. So that would be valuable to do a few reminders on that. So as with all of the component manuals, there is that 4.5 gallons per foot per day limited linear loading rate for soils that have a less than or equal to 0.3 gallons per day square feet. When Josh went through and redid the approval for this, he added a note there saying that this is separate from the downsizing credit and takes priority on any design, regardless of what product is used. So for in general, the GeoMat component manuals can go up to 10 gallons per foot per day. But if you're on limited soils, that linear loading rate restriction still applies. So it's just important to keep in mind when you're doing your design that regardless of if it gets, you know, effluent number 2 rating or whatever, that requirement is still there. Additionally, something that we see come up occasionally, and I'm sure the counties see it a lot more often as we don't do that many in-ground plan reviews, is this requirement that is unique to the GeoMat in-ground component manual regarding the volume of a single dose. So these two things that I have up on the screen here are unique to the GeoMat in-ground component manual, where the volume of a single dose for a pressure distribution system or for a non-pressure, like a dosed system, it's limited to a 1/2 gallon per linear foot of GeoMat flat. That is the dose volume that it must be. There's no window as to what it could be like there is with the pressure component manual. So there's that. Next slide. An additional reminder, and this will be important later, is the GeoMat component height. So the GeoMat component itself includes that 12 inches of ASTM C33 sand. So that'll be important with the changes that are coming up in the next couple of slides. And the max burial depth of geomats is 42 inches. So that's important to keep in mind too, especially on sites that have some slope to the surface, you know, 2, 5, 4%. Make sure that at the deepest, it's no deeper than 42 inches buried. Next slide. So these are the changes that were made to the GeoMat in-ground component manual, and their clarifications mostly that came about from questions that were requested from inspectors and from installers. So specifically in the previous version of the component manual, there was a lot of confusion because it really wasn't clear about how many filters are required of what kind they need to be. So there was a clarification added to the in-ground component manual regarding filters, saying that only one is required. You can use more, of course, if you choose, better, maybe. But that for gravity systems, a septic tank effluent filter shall be used, you know, a regular gravity filter that we would typically see. But if there's a dose or a pressure distribution system there, if there's a pump, a pressure filter shall be used. You could use a gravity filter as well if you wanted, but only one is required. So in addition to that, there was also a change made regarding the location and vertically within the system, where should these observation pipes be located? It was unclear in the previous version of the component manual. So hopefully the changes that have been made will make it more clear. So in the current version of the manual, it states that the location of the observation pipes shall be at the infiltrative surface at the end of each cell. So the infiltrative surface being below that 12 inches of component sand. There was confusion before, should the location of the observation pipe be right under the mat? Should it be on top of the mat? Where should it be? It's clear now, it's at the infiltrative surface at the end of the cell. And that is clarified further in the manual that shall be installed in the sand portion at the bottom where the infiltrative surface should be. There's also a clarification noted, you know, if you're going through the GeoMat, they should use a utility knife to cut through it. You can do that and just, you know, put it in a way that is common sense. And you can also contact the manufacturer's rep or Josh Rowley within our office if you have product review questions. He's under the weather today, so I'm taking over this portion of it, but he handles the product review and renewal for these. So if you have questions, contact him. He might just be out for a couple of days. So.
All right. Well, thanks for the GeoMat update.
We have a few questions here.
Okay.
So
Sure.
Eric, proper venting for GeoMat. I believe in the component manual, it says vents are not recommended for GeoMat products, and that's in the component manual. And then is slotting on the OSB pipe the only way, or can holes be drilled in a line up to 6-inch mark? There's specific diagrams and things. I believe Geomat also sells a flange that you could use, but there's information in the manual. I don't have it open right now as to how those observations should be done. Vent septic, so the system has to be vented somewhere, and maybe we'll talk about that later, Matt, regarding venting of a system.
Yeah,
or
I don't have that in
maybe a
today's
topic for a
presentation, but
further
we
chat.
can do that for next chat. We'll talk about venting requirements. Yep.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, some other things I wanted to mention here: winter soil testing. The time's coming up for that. Department field verifications are dependent on weather conditions, so just be aware. We can always see some things. If the weather isn't good, we won't be out doing on-sites. And that also is now playing into things such as interpretatives. If you have stuff that's submitted, you may have been out there in August and done it, but by the time it comes in and based on our workload, if we can't get to it and the weather turns, we may not be able to evaluate stuff till springtime. So just be aware of that. Also, the two sections here, 385.20 parent 4A, soil color evaluation shall be performed on days when light conditions permit accurate color determinations. We used to have actual times and dates when you could do winter soil testing. We don't have that in the code anymore, but obviously if you have poor light conditions or late in the day when the sun's low, we're going to have a hard time seeing colors, and it may be hard for you to evaluate. I mean, I've seen many soil tests where done in the winter, and then you come back in the spring or summer, they go to put it in, and it's like, whoa, what are these things out here? We see redox all over it, and they just weren't able to see them in the wintertime. So be careful, be aware of that. And also frozen soil, we have to thaw it before conducting evaluations for color, texture, and structure and consistency. The other thing to be aware of, I know in the past we've had people that have dug pits, they froze up, and they'll maybe put some charcoal or start a fire in the pit to thaw it out. Doing that can change the soil color. You can sort of bake it, and even though you peel it out, that may change soil color, helping oxidize. Just like exposing a pit for a long period of time, you can oxidize things. Driving the moisture out with a fire can also change some of the soil characteristics, so just be aware of that. And then winter construction, frozen soil, POWTS treatment dispersal components, can't be installed if the soil is frozen at or below the infiltrative surface. So once stuff freezes up, we can't continue working on those systems. And then also snow cover. I mean, if we do have a light snow or something like that, we got to try to remove the snow cover before excavating or installing a POWTS treatment dispersal component. So not to say you couldn't do a conventional in the winter if you can get through the frost, but we got to remove the snow. We don't want that falling into where we're excavating or where we're digging in. Some other kind of questions that have popped up here. Chicken processing had an owner that wants, or I think it was needed or required part of their licensing, connected facility that processes chickens. Well, what's required? Well, the bathroom is domestic wastewater, can be handled the usual manner. It seems silly maybe to put a system in for one employee, because that's what it was. 13 gallons a day, sized up 150%, 20 gallons a day. Possibly ridiculous to do that. So the processing wastewater for the chicken processing, that's an industrial wastewater regulated by the DNR, but most likely in this case, probably do a commingled holding tank or something like that, put the wastewater in there. So again, make sure whether it's domestic or industrial wastewater, but there is possibility to commingle those with DNR approval. Previously filled site had an owner who wants to proceed with a site that was filled back in 2007 with ASTM C33 sand. So what do they need to do now? Just like any site containing fill in the treatment area, it will be an individual site design, but then also it's most likely going to require a visit by the DSPS field person. So, even if it was filled with ASTM C33 sand, we still want to go out there to see what it looks like today. Did, the site get further manipulated? Was there some erosion on the site? Plants or trees or something caused an issue, or maybe the water raised up into that sand. We'd still want to have it evaluated and looked at. Mass loading had a question about, doing some mass loading. This is an individual site design, but if a site requires 1,200 square feet based on domestic strength wastewater, how much would be required based on a mass loading? So basically what we're doing is instead of loading it according to the parameters in the code, 220 BOD, 150 TSS, 30 FOG, if we have something higher than that, could we load it on a mass loading instead of in the tables, assigned in the code, 0.6 gallons or 0.7 gallons, or 0.3 or whatever the soil type would say. Well, you can, but it depends on the strength of that wastewater. So for instance, if the wastewater is twice as strong, so 440 milligrams per liter BOD, that's twice the 220, then the area would be required to be larger. So whatever you figured out, the gallons per day based on the soil loading rate for domestic strength, if the wastewater is twice as strong, you need twice as much area. But be aware that not only do you have to account for BOD, but you have to account for TSS, you have to account for FOG. So each one of those may have multipliers. So basically, if you get a little bit over, you probably could do that, but if you get much over, and especially FOG is much harder to treat. Fat soil greases are about 8 times more difficult. You might need a system, even at 40 FOG, you might need a system that's huge in order to treat something like that. Time dosing had a question. Does a time dose system need tank reserve capacity above the alarm, or does the surge or working volume suffice? The answer is yes, unless designed with a duplex pump or a reserve capacity of 1 day estimated flow needs to be included in there. And that's basically to allow time to fix an issue if the pump doesn't activate. So if we have our working capacity where the pump kicks on, but it will only dose every so often, and then, if it finally gets so full the alarm kicks on, well, the problem is if we don't have any capacity, then the alarm kicks on, pretty soon we'll be overflowing the tank. So you need to have that, still to have that 1 day reserve capacity above the alarm, or a duplex system that would kick in. The alarm would go off saying, hey, we got to run the duplex, and that's our problem now. But at least we'd have that other pump being able to run and take care of it. Sanitary permits. Question is, can a county hold a sanitary permit for reasons other than POWTS? So for instance, they got a zoning violation, or they're digging in a wetland or something like that. The answer is no. Wisconsin statute 145.191M in part here says the governmental unit shall approve or disapprove the sanitary permit according to the rules promulgated by the department under this chapter. So a zoning or a sanitary permit can only be evaluated according to sanitary rules. Now, I've had some cases where the county says we don't want to issue this permit because they don't meet the zoning, they can never build. You can notify them of that and tell them, hey, we're going to issue the sanitary permit, but you're never going to build out there because you don't meet the zoning requirements, or it's an outlot and it's restricted, or it's too small, it's a substandard lot, you can't put a building on it. And that may be the case. Some people think if I get a sanitary permit, that's going to give me more leverage to get something down the road. Whether it is or not, it doesn't matter for us. We can only evaluate according to sanitary rules. And that's further backed up in 383. It says, upon review of the application and supporting information, governmental unit or the department determines the proposed design, installation, and management of the existing POWTS or new POWTS. If it's, conforms with the chapter, then you have to issue the permit. So by doing that, you have to tell them, yeah, here I'm issuing it, and maybe you may not be able to build, or there's other issues you have to accomplish, or hurdles you have to go through. But a sanitary permit can only be evaluated according to the sanitary rules. County maintenance program. Question was, can a county require a certain format or information when reporting maintenance events? And yeah, 383.2552B establishes at a minimum the POWTS maintenance program shall consist of the following elements, and it lists what those are. But it's a minimum, so the counties can add other things in that they want to require as part of a maintenance program. So this is one of the parts of the code that it's not uniform. We do give the counties a little latitude to require that. And also it states farther in 383.255 that a process that accepts and records. So it doesn't state, what that process is. A lot of counties send out a card. Some counties now are going to an electronic form that you have to enter on an electronic format or go into their system and download things. So the county can say how, when, where, and what they want reported as part of that maintenance program. So we do give the counties latitude to manage that. But that's what I have for this month's POWT chat. Give you sort of a wide range. I know you guys want some other stuff in there. We'll try to write that down. Remember that for next time. Again, a lot of stuff happens in the POWT program. We can only cover so much in an hour, but it's our chance to reach out to you and get you some information and let you interact with us a little bit. And don't have a whole lot of time, but I guess I'll turn it back to Katie and to the floor. And if there's any other questions that somebody wants to ask, we'll see what we can do in a few minutes we have remaining.
Thank you so much, Matt. And if people want to enter their credentials into the chat as a way of logging out and leave if they so choose, you're more than welcome. Thank you so much for being here with POWTS chat today. Otherwise, if you want to unmute yourself soon, you can ask questions verbally or you can enter them in the chat. It's just kind of difficult when everyone's closing out with their credentials to keep track of the questions that are in the chat mixed in. So I'm going to end the recording shortly, but I just wanted to say that next month, pending the federal government being in operation, it's our plan to have the assistant state soil scientists come on and talk about soil survey, what they're doing with it, how to best use it, the history of it. So more soils-based information. And then, as we had discussed today, possibly into this winter, doing more information on variances, what is equivalency, things like that, but just some topics that might come up as deep dives later into this winter. So I'd like to thank you all, and I'm going to stop the recording now, and then you can ask questions and things.
Yeah, so those are good topics. We could talk about venting and talk about variances. I think those